Hello, and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About Shh. This is a podcast where we talk about sex, love, relationships, gender, sexuality, sexual orientation, everything related. So, who am I? My name is Tila. I am a sex educator and relationship expert from Vancouver, Canada. I love helping people connect with that part of themselves, explore their sexuality, get their sexual questions answered, and have better sex and relationships. So, today's topic is going to be how do you know if you're in love? It's a big topic for a lot of people because love can be very confusing, especially if you've never been in love before. So, how do you know if you are? We get a lot of messages about love and what love should look like. Through the media, we're shown this idea of the perfect love, what that looks like in TV and movies. And a lot of us form our basic ideas about love and romance from our early experiences from our caregivers because, what kind of compassion and love and care we're shown as children, and what sort of love we see modeled by our caregivers, whether they're our parents or aunts and uncles or foster parents or whoever is taking care of us, the type of romantic relationships we see them have impact our ideas of what real romance and what real love should look like. And that follows us through the rest of our life. So as we grow up, we continue to learn and we come to some very different conclusions about what love is and what love can look like. And that doesn't necessarily follow that it gets any easier. It can still be pretty tricky to tell. And especially if you're young. And often people will simply say, well, you just know. When they're talking about being in love. I don't know if everybody's ever said that to you. I've had people say that to me when I was like, first time I was trying to figure out if I was in love. People are like, well, you just know if you are. It's not helpful, right? There's a lot of unhealthy ideas and a lot of unhealthy ideals for relationships out there. And often these unhealthy dynamics are passed off as love. But that doesn't necessarily mean they are. It can actually be, the first stages of abuse or manipulation. So one of the things we have to think about when we're thinking about love and whether or not this is love is we have to acknowledge the difference between love and obsession and love and lust. So let's talk about obsession first, because there's a really common perception that love is meant to be all-encompassing. Your ultimate love will complete you. You're unable to think, eat, sleep, drink, survive without this love. And it will eclipse your total life with passion. And that may sound really romantic, but that's actually fundamentally obsession. Obsession is defined by the domination of one's thoughts or feelings by a persistent idea or desire. And so if you're unable to take a single step without thinking about this person, it's safe to say they're dominating your thoughts, And obsession can actually lead us down some fairly unhealthy paths. So, we can become totally dependent and unable to function without the other person. There is a difference between missing someone and unable to function without them. When we're unable to go on, we restrict ourselves and our lives. We pass up our opportunities that could be good for us. We live less full and happy lives. And love should not be making us less. Obsession can also lead us into some abusive situations. Abuse doesn't just appear in our lives. And if it did, many of us would just not accept it like that. When we're obsessed and too eager to please someone, we can slowly start to accommodate them more and more and more. And it doesn't really feel like a lot because it's small little steps along the way. But as the relationship continues, unhealthy habits, continue to form and can take us down the slippery slope that ultimately leads to abuse. And, does this always happen? No, absolutely not. However, it is one of the ways that people can find themselves in very unhealthy situations. They make the mistake of, mistaking obsession for love, and they become committed to it. And real love should be supportive and nourish you and not take over your entire being. I don't like the idea of love completing someone because you're already a whole person on your own. You don't need to be completed. Love should add something to your life. It should not complete you. You should be whole on your own. So what about lust? How is that different? Is lust the same as love? And it's important to note that lust is a very intense form of attraction. And it mostly relies on physical attraction or physical attributes of a person. And it's that base primal desire, that's fueled by our hormones and clouds our judgment. And extreme forms of lust can be seen as obsession, because at its height, it can cause us to ignore signs that could spell trouble for us. So if we get caught up in the fantasy and the idealization of the other person, we see the person who's the focal point of our lust, we see them as we want to see them and not necessarily as they actually are. So this intense attraction can also cause people to drop everything else in their lives and just let those things fall to the wayside. Lust and obsession can be quite closely linked, right? And in some cases, if this happens, it can make someone feel like nothing is more important than the person they're lusting after, which, like I said, sort of ties into that obsession piece. And it's not always a case, but it can be a warning sign that a person's feelings are more based in lust than they are in love. So some signs of lust can be, the desire to keep the relationship on a fantasy level and not discuss real feelings, being totally focused on a person's looks or body, only being interested in sexual activities and having little interest in like conversation or other activities that aren't related to sex. You're lovers, but you're not really friends. You're quick to leave. If somebody's quick to leave sexual activity rather than staying to cuddle or enjoy the company of a person. So lust is a really important aspect of romantic attachment, and I don't want to minimize that. Like, sexual attraction is very important. Having that spark is very important in relationships. And it's often what's considered to be the most exciting part. It's what makes our heart race and gives us a thrill. And the thing about lust is that it can wax and wane, even when love is present. So sometimes, when when lust runs its course and drops off, relationships that haven't established any emotional connection can start to experience problems. People get impatient with the faults of their partner and, things that they previously ignored because they were kind of caught up in that lust haze. And for some, that can signal the end of a romantic relationship. So there's nothing necessarily bad about lust. Lust is not evil, but we have to acknowledge and see it for what it is. Okay? So we sort of talked about obsession and lust. So what about love? What is love? How can we define that? So love, in contrast to the things we just talked about, tends to be more of an emotional connection. Now, when we're talking about relationships, it's definitely more of a romantic connection. And, we're more realistic. We tend to be more realistic in our perceptions of our partner and any faults they may have. So instead of this fast pace and dizzying, highs that lust can push us through, love tends to feel a little bit more grounded and steady. We're able to create a safer space for our partners to be emotionally vulnerable for us in a way that most people can't, if they're not in love with someone. So the big thing is, like, when we're in love, we tend to build a strong foundation of friendship as well. Often this means sharing certain interests or passions or worldviews, morals, anything like that. And our connection to our partner doesn't have to be totally seamless, but we often feel like they're a good fit for us. So we care about their well-being, beyond the sexual activity, and we care about their mental and emotional and physical health, So some common signs of what love can look like, is wanting to spend quality time together, doing things other than sex. being able to communicate with each other and get lost in conversation, honestly listening to each other's feelings, supporting each other in times of need. Your partner may motivate you to be a better person or vice versa. And, you're sort of out as a couple to friends and family. A lot of the time, if it's just lust or something that feels a little bit more temporary, maybe more, not always, and not for everyone, of course, but some people may feel more likely to hide their relationship and not acknowledge it as much. So for most people, love is a very crucial ingredient for long-term romantic happiness. And it's what most people dream about and look for. And some people spend most of their lives looking for it. One of the great things about love is that it can stand the test of time, and you don't need to rush through courtship with your partner. If they're meant to be the love of your life, then they will be. And rushing through the relationship isn't going to make it happen any faster. So every kind of love that we experience is going to be different because we continue to grow and change throughout our lives. So who we were today is not who we were yesterday. We have grown and learned from yesterday's experiences. So if love is always a little different, that means our experience of love is always going to be a little bit different too, which I think adds to the challenge of people knowing if they're in love, because it may not feel like it did last time. There's other combinations of things of, lust and stuff like that too. So that changes it as well. So, how do you know? How do you know in those circumstances? Even if you've been in love before and this is new, how do you know it's love now? So, it's important people close to us can offer an opinion as an outsider based on their observations of behavior. It's important we listen to those opinions from people that we care about, because they may have valuable insights that we might have missed, particularly if we're caught up in the throes of passion and lust. So don't discount those opinions, that you don't have to give them super uber weight. People do not need the power to decide if you're in love or tell you if you're in love. It's merely as a guide to help you explore your own feelings and to look at things a different way. Examining how you feel is going to be really key, because at the end of the day, only you're the only person who's going to know if you're in love or not. It's going to be different each time. So that's, like I said, it's not something someone else can tell you. So one key thing to think about when you're thinking about your feelings is asking yourself a few things like, do you feel drained after spending time with your partner? Does it feel like your relationship or your love is an unstoppable force? What's your gut feeling about the relationship and your partner as it stands? So your experience of love, it's very personal, and each time is going to be different. And it's also going to be colored by those perceptions that you had that we sort of talked about at the start, when you're growing up, how was love modeled to you? And that's going to play a big role in how you feel love presents and what love should look like. And, that's going to make a big difference. So hopefully that'll help you sort of clear things up a little bit as how do you know if you're in love? I want to answer a few questions that I got with this new format for the podcast. If you have questions, please email them into questions@exploresextalk.com, and I will try and address as many as I can. We're going to do 3 today, and they're a little bit shorter. So the first question comes in from Marie, and Marie was saying, my ex-husband moved on to someone younger and prettier. It hurts me that our kids like her so much. Would it be wrong to not let them around her until they get married? Well, Marie, being hurt is really understandable. But I have to say, placing your kids in the middle is only going to do harm. It places a lot of stress on kids, and as well as asks them to divide their loyalties. The other thing is that, what are you modeling to them? What are you showing them? Is it going to teach them some very negative things that they're going to carry into their adult relationships? I'd recommend finding other ways to address the way that you're feeling. How you feel it's okay. It's understandable. And it's perfectly valid to feel upset and hurt. But you need to work through those emotions and take care of yourself. And there's better ways to do that than perhaps spiteful actions. I would say don't focus on this new relationship that your ex has. Focus on you. Clearly this relationship with your ex wasn't working out, and maybe that's for the best. This is an opportunity for you to do something different and something that will maybe give you more happiness. They say the best revenge is a life well lived. So I would say forget about them and, live your life well and, do that for yourself and for your kids. I hope that helps. The next question is from Janet, and Janet's wondering, why doesn't my boyfriend ever tell me he's proud of me when I accomplish something? Okay, well, there's a lot of reasons why this could be the case, Janet. And it's difficult to know based on the lack of information that kind of comes with the question. So, it could be a number of things like, maybe he doesn't see it as an accomplishment. Maybe he doesn't care. Let's hope it's not those. But, it's more likely that he wasn't probably raised to be supportive and validating. Many men are not. So it's a skill that they haven't really learned and they don't know how to practice. So it's probably not that he doesn't care or doesn't see his accomplishment, but he probably doesn't know how to show support or approval. Or there's a chance that he doesn't think that you need the validation. These are just a couple of simple answers. There's definitely a lot more it could be. And, the best way to get the answer from, or get the real answer is to ask him, it might be a good idea to sort of think about what would feel good to you as well before you go in and ask him, because if he just doesn't know how to show the validation, you're like, hey, how come you never show approval? Or how come you never say, how come you never tell me you're proud of me? It may just be, and he doesn't know how to do it. It may just be, he may be looking for some examples from you. So, if he has no idea how to support you, he may need that guidance. So think about that before you ask. Also, we all want validation. We all want support, particularly from our partners. It's very important. But maybe think about some other ways that you feel validation as well. Okay, moving on to the last question we're going to address. So this question comes in from Neil, and it says, could wearing pheromones in the workplace be considered a form of harassment, and that they are used in an attempt to chemically evoke special interest from the opposite gender and worn without others' consent? Well, Neil, I'd say that that's depending on the level of malicious intent and the level of action to which it's taken. Many actions can be harassing, but context is a really important piece for this conversation. Several questions come to mind in response to this question, like, has the person made their intentions known? Are they trying to attract a particular person? Has the person being pursued had a chance to respond? Is the attempt to attract interest continuing past the point of rejection? Or is this something just maybe the person wearing the perfume or pheromones, whatever the case may be, maybe they're wearing it because they like it. It's not an attempt to attract. So there's some context, questions like this would make it a lot clearer as to whether or not this would be considered harassment. Because if the person being pursued has already stated a lack of interest, and, then that has to be respected, right? And in which case it would be harassment. If the situation has gotten to a place where an answer has been asked for or not given, or maybe it's not a matter of pursuit, maybe they're not pursuing anyone, but wearing because it makes them feel good, it makes them feel confident or whatever, it's hard to say. I wouldn't say that necessarily classifies as harassment. If somebody finds it distracting or offensive, maybe that might warrant a conversation. There are many workplaces that have scent-free policies also for allergies as well. I mean, smell and pheromones do play a significant role in our levels of attraction, but it's not a sure thing either. So, people do not feel an uncontrollable sense of compulsion from just pheromones. So it would be something that could be a factor into a decision, but not a deciding factor, if that makes sense. And the most important role is whether or not it's happening on a conscious level. Is this an intentional and malicious, right? So anyway, I hope that helps. That's sort of all we're going to chat about today. So the next show will be aired on Tuesday, August 11th at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you enjoyed this, please follow, like, subscribe, share, tell somebody about it. And if you're looking for more information, please check out my website, exploresextalk.com. There's lots of free articles on there about how to improve your relationships and your sex life. And if you're looking for that little extra zing, please join our Sexy Hero Society, where we publish tons and tons of fantastic content every month. So thanks so much for tuning in. I will see you all next week.